Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our 21st webinar for TILO, the Tech Integration Leaders of Ohio. My name is Kristie Hughes, and I also have on the webinar with me Chris Malanga. So we'll introduce ourselves in just a quick second. You are listening to the 45 G Suite tips in 45 minutes. So there is, if you can see that live discussion Q&A URL at the bottom of the page, there is that link there that pulls out to a Google Doc. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to jot those down in there, and we'll do our best to answer some of those questions during this Hangout, as well as even after this Hangout is over, we will continue to look at that document. So if anything pops up afterwards, feel free to go ahead and use that. So that URL is down at the bottom of the page. At the top of the page, there is the presentation link. You can feel free to get a copy of this presentation if you'd like to, or just kind of look at some of the tips that we're going to show. We are going to move pretty quickly because we do have just 45 minutes or 60 minutes depending on questions and so forth. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Kristie Hughes. I'm an educational technologist over at NOACA, and I have with me Chris Malanga, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Malanga. I'm an educational integration specialist over at NOACA.
All right, great. Thank you, Chris. We are both Google certified trainers, and so we hope that we can enlighten you in some tips and tricks during this session. So once again, we're going to do our best to give you 45 G Suite tips in 45 minutes. We'll quickly pace through the tips. But once again, that presentation URL is at the top of the page, and the discussion Q&A link is down towards the bottom. So feel free to jot your questions down there, and we'll do our best to answer those.
Real quick, Kristie, I also posted the link to the presentation into that Q&A document as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So just by going to that document, you will get both the presentation link and then be able to post your questions. So I do want to make one note before we go ahead and jump to our first tip. And that note is that if you are on a Mac computer, you're going to substitute your command key. So we're going to give you a lot of keyboard tips and tricks during this presentation. And a lot of them are Control Z or Control M and so forth. But obviously, if you're on a Mac computer, you're going to use that command key instead of the Control key. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to slide number 1. So give me just a second to scroll up to the first tip. And so our first tip is at NOACA, we have free weekly tech tips via email. So every Tuesday, if you go to techtips.noaca.org, you can sign up for a tech tip every Tuesday. This will come directly to your inbox. We don't spam you. We don't add you to a list or anything like that. We just give you a short tip or trick about something that you can try inside your classroom. And so just by visiting that website down at the bottom of your page, techtips.noaca.org, you can go ahead and get signed up for free, and you can enjoy those tech tips every Tuesday. And feel free to share that out with anybody. It doesn't have to be in Northwest Ohio or Ohio. It can be anywhere. So those are totally free. The second tip that we're going to show you is take a screenshot. And so this is, of course, available on a Chromebook, a Mac, and a Windows machine. And we have the instructions depending on which machine you're using. So for a Chromebook, you can use your Control and then the Windows switcher key if you want to do a full screenshot. If you'd like to just do a partial screenshot, this is the one that I use quite a bit. If I'm just trying to capture like a small area of my screen, I can use the Control plus Shift plus the Windows switcher key. Now again, that's on your Chromebook. And so for on a Mac computer, you're going to go ahead and try the full screenshot, which is your Command plus Shift plus the number 3. And then your partial, again, this is the one I use the most, is your Command plus Shift plus your 4. If you're on a Windows machine, there is a pre-installed snipping tool that's going to be under your All Programs or your All Apps. And you can go ahead and take a screenshot using that option. So shortcut keys for Chrome tabs. And I have a little tip at the bottom. Again, if you are on a Mac computer, you do want to use your Command key. So once again, don't try your Control key. It's not going to work on a Mac. You do want to use that Command key. But these are really, really helpful shortcut keys. And so if you want to open the last close tab, that happens quite a bit. You close your tab, you forget, or you didn't mean to close it. you can use the Control-Shift-T, open incognito tab. Those of you that are not familiar with incognito tabs, that you can do like file incognito mode, or again, Control+Shift+N. And what that does is it brings up a new window. And if you're already logged in to a window like just regular Chrome, your incognito tab allows you to just be fresh. Like, it's not even like you're logged in. It's like totally a different account. It pretends that, you know, you're a new user. So I use that quite a bit for testing purposes. Like if I'm into something and I want to just go ahead and do a new window and have it not remember anything that I've done in the past, I use that. It is important to note, though, that some districts, especially for students, may have that turned off. So you do want to make sure that, you know, if you are using that, that is something just to use. Go through your 1st through your 8th tab. This is really helpful. This kind of saves you time rather than clicking with your mouse through all your different tabs. You can use your Command key or, again, your Control key. So Control-1 goes to your 1st tab, Control-2 goes to your 2nd tab, all the way, you know, to 8. And so that's just a really helpful way to just kind of go through all your tabs without actually using your mouse click. Open a new tab, Control-N, and close your active tab. That's going to be your Control-W. And so that's a really helpful one too, a real time saver, especially for grading purposes. In a little bit, we'll give you some tips on Google Classroom and grading and so forth. If you're trying to close windows pretty quickly, that Control-W will do that for you. So zooming and undo and redo, zoom in and zoom out. These are, again, really, really ones that I love the most, because especially when I'm presenting, sometimes if it's hard for students to see in the back of the room, or Chris and I teach teachers a lot. And so sometimes, you know, if we have a big room of a lot of people, it's hard for the people in the back to see. So you can zoom in on your screen using that Control+, or once again, if you're on a Mac computer, that Command+, or Command-. You don't have to do the, you know, Control+ and Control- a lot. You could just do the Control-0, which will bring you all the way back down to 100% immediately. A keyboard shortcut for undo is going to be your Control-Z, and then redo is Control-Y. So again, just some time savers. So our 5th tip or trick for your G Suite is the using multiple Google accounts in Chrome. And if you're like Chris and I and probably everybody else in the world, you have more than one Google account, whether it's your school account and your personal account for Gmail, or maybe you have, maybe you're involved in some sort of classes through a college or something and you have multiple Google accounts. We definitely recommend that you keep them separate. And you can do that if you look at the screen here. It says Chris at Nowaka at the very, very top. That means that Chris is signed into Chrome. And so when he's signed into Chrome, all of you have more than one Google account, whether it's your school account and your personal account for Gmail, or maybe you have, maybe you're involved in some sort of classes through a college or something and you have multiple Google accounts. Oh, sorry about that. So at the top, it says Chris at Nowaka. And so basically what that means is that Chris is signed into that account at Nowaka. So if he signs out of it, he doesn't really need to sign out of it. He can just switch between different accounts. And so again, this is a screenshot of all the different accounts that he may have. And he can just toggle between all those different accounts to get to get apps and extensions or history or favorites or anything that he might have in those particular accounts. So you definitely want to keep all of your accounts separate. You do not need to have one account that has everything together. So I'll let Chris talk about this next few slides, starting with math in your Omnibox.
All right, Chrome has a great feature at the top called the Omnibox, and most people call that the URL bar or the Google search bar, but you can do a lot of different things with the Omnibox. And the first thing you can do is do some math problems. So if you're quickly trying to figure out a calculation, like you want to figure out 175.12 times 5, you can just type it into your Omnibox, and you don't even have to hit enter. It's just going to show you the total right below. Then, if you actually want to see the calculator portion of it, if you want it to actually open up a calculator, you can type the same math problem and hit enter to display a calculator for you. So 2 ways to do math in your Omnibox. You can also do a search for current exchange rates. So you could type something like 1 peso, and it will actually convert the exchange rates for you right in your Omnibox. So your Omnibox is more than just a place to search or to put a URL in. It's a great way to, you know, to do a lot of different other things. Also, one of the cool things you can do in the Omnibox is to use a timer. So you can just type set timer for and hit enter. And this is a great one if you're doing like a time test for like your students. You can type in there, you can say set timer for 5 minutes. And timer will actually start in Chrome. And as you can see on the slide, you have the option to have volume. So it will actually turn like a ringer out, gets to 0. Or you can make the timer full screen. So this is a great way if you want your kids to focus. You could say something like, okay, for the next 20 minutes, we're going to only focus on our creative writing. And so you could put the timer up on the screen, load up full size, and the kids would actually have some time constraints in which to do things. So that's just a quick way to do a quick timer without getting your phone out. Pin browser tabs. I use this one religiously. I don't know if you know about this or not, but you can actually pin a browser tab. And what that does is when you right or control click on a tab, or command click for your Mac people, and say pin tab, what that happens is it moves the tab to the left, and then it shrinks that tab down to just the icon size. So if you can see on the screen right there, the tab that's to the left with the is actually a Google Slides tab that has been pinned down onto the taskbar. And then what happens is those tabs stay open even if you close and reopen the browser until you unpin them. So what I've done is in my Nowaka account, I've got my Nowaka Chrome profile. And in my Chrome profile, I've got my Gmail, I've got my Google Calendar, my Google Drive, I've got Google Keep, and all of those are pinned. So at any point in time, I can just go over and hit Gmail quick and check my mail real quick and then go back to what I'm doing. And those tabs stay with me even if I close and reopen the browser. So it's just a cool feature to quickly pin some tabs up there. So think through things that you want to get to frequently. Maybe it's your gradebook, or maybe it's Google Classroom or your Gmail. You can pin those tabs, and then they're easy to open. The next one, bookmarks is pretty pictures. Every time I show this one to teachers, they are just wowed by this one. So we all know that bookmark bar, that when you add it to an item to your bookmark bar, you get the little favicon, and then you get the text. So if I add Gmail, I'll get the little Gmail icon, and it'll say Gmail. Well, if we know what those icons already mean, so if you look across the top there, you can see the Twitter icon and the Facebook icon and the Google Calendar icon. We can actually get rid of the names and leave just the favicon showing, and it saves a lot of space in our bookmarks bar. And so the way to do that is to edit the name of the bookmark. So you can control click or right click on a bookmark and then just edit the name. And all you have to do is delete out the text of the name. And then when you hit return or enter, it will leave the favicon showing. And that's the only thing that shows. Start stacking all of these different icons on your browser, and you don't even need the text that goes along with them. So it's really a space saver for your bookmarks. And then one of the other things is locating a file. And this is really good in Google Drive. It's trying to figure out the breadcrumbs where a file is located. So when you have a file open, so for example, we've got a folder open there called November 7th Materials. I can see very quickly with those breadcrumbs, which are highlighted in the blue box, that is in my drive. It's in a folder called INS Shared Folder. It's in a folder called 2017-18 Trainings, inside Anthony Wayne, and then finally November 7th Materials. So I can quickly figure out where I'm located and the path to the document. But then there's also a neat little icon called View Details, and it looks like the eye inside a circle. And what that'll let you do is it'll let me quickly see the location of where the folder is or the file is. I can see that right there. And I can see that this is actually in two different folders, the class materials folder and also the November 7th materials folder. And later on, Kristie is going to talk to you about how to get those folders or an item in multiple folders. But right now, I'll turn it back over to her.
Okay, well, that was a great lead into the next part, which is add a file to multiple folders in your Google Drive. And so what happens is when you have a file or a doc or a Google Sheet or anything like that, it may be that your goal is really that it should go in multiple folders. And so if you click on that item, that file, that Google Sheet, whatnot, and then hit Shift Z, this will allow you, it'll bring up a little window and it will allow you to choose a different folder for you to put that file in. So essentially you're able to put one file in multiple folders. And so what's important to know about that, though, is if you delete the file in one location, it's deleted in both. And so it does not actually make a copy of that. It actually just puts it, the same file, in 2 folders. And so that last bullet there down at the bottom, if you click on that I that Chris was just talking about, this pulls up a little, your sidebar that shows you all the different folders that file may be in. So for instance, let's say that file is in 4 different folders. If you click the X on one of the folders, that file will still remain in the 3 other folders. And so you can kind of tell it which ones to stay in and which ones to be removed from within that I, rather than just removing the file. Because once again, if you remove the file, then it's removed from every single folder. So some search techniques, if you don't really know about these search techniques, you can search just using a Google search. You can you can search by year, like maybe you're looking for a certain book that was copyrighted by a certain year, certain month, or keywords, if they have an owner, and down at the bottom, use quotations. So you can even put a phrase within quotations and search for that phrase within those quotations. So like it would search for that entire phrase rather than each word individually. Google also has an advanced search, which is part of it. You could drop the menu down and tell it kind of these things also, which just really saves you time, because I know for me, when I search on Google, I mean, sometimes you end up with like a million results, and you have to sit and scroll through all the different things that you might get. So just some ways to kind of save you time in your searches.
And those search techniques work in Google as well as in the Google Drive product. So you can actually use that in Google Drive and in Gmail too.
Great, thank you, Chris. So the next tip is Control F. And so Control F is your find. And so if you have something like if you're in Google Drive or you're in another Google app, even Classroom, you can click on Control F, or once again on a Mac, you can do Command F, and this will search for whatever keyword or whatever key phrase you're going to put in there. So again, you don't have to kind of search through everything. You can just use that Control F, and that will help you find some things. In Classroom, if you have a lot of things in your stream, you may be scrolling. Like if right before this webinar, I searched for a journal, the word journal in Classroom, and it pulled up a ton of different journals because I have a lot of journals in the class that Chris and I are teaching for Classroom, but it will find that keyword for you. To quickly get to files, in Google Drive, at the top of your Google Drive, you do have this little, what they call a quick access menu or quick access toolbar. And this is going to show you all the recent files that you may have used or that you may have opened. And so that's a really good way. The other thing I want to mention too is you can also feel free to use the starred and the recent. And I'm a big fan of both of those because sometimes, especially if you're on the phone or you're doing something really quickly, you may forget which folder you put it in, or you may even forget like what you named it. And so that recent part in Google Drive is really helpful because you could just click on recent and it will pull up all the recent files that you have just been working on. Starred is also really important. I use that quite a bit. This also is available in Gmail. You can star messages, or you can star folders in Drive, or even individual files. So this is just kind of a quick and easy way just to kind of store things in that starred area, and then that way, every day you may click on the starred, menu and then get to that if that's what you need to look at when you start your day or something like that. Comment shortcuts, those of you that are using comments in maybe slides or sheets or docs, to insert a comment pretty quickly. I mean, most of you probably know if you use comments is you just kind of move your cursor over to the side and that little comment bubble will pop up. But another quick way to insert a comment is your Control-Alt-M. And you can also, if you're finding that some of your users are not getting notified when you give them comments, you can use the @ symbol or the plus sign and then their name. So for instance, before I type the comment, I can say @ and then if I just start typing Chris's name, CHRIS, because he's a person that I work with quite a bit, or he's within my domain, it will search his name and it'll pop up Chris Malanga. So then I can go ahead and click on Chris Malanga, and then I can type my comment in. What will then happen is he will get an email, he will get notified that I'm actually specifically giving him a comment, or maybe I request a reply, or maybe he needs to change something within the document. So you can also, if you want to bold a comment, you can use the text within those little stars there, italics, and then to save your comment, you can do the Control+Enter. So that's just another shortcut of how you can go ahead and do that within comments. I'll hand it back to Chris to go ahead and talk about copies.
Well, One of the things that we tend to have is we get a lot of copies of documents. And so one of the ways to get around making copies is using the revision history. I don't know how many people have played with the revision history, but it shows all the edits that were made and when they were made and who made them. So revision history is actually pretty useful to go with your students. If you've got students that have changed a document or you want to see what they've done, you can go into that revision history. And then when you go and you want to look at a previous version, all you have to do is restore that version. So if you look at the screenshot here, the last time that I took this screenshot, it was August 4th at 8:20. If I want to go back to that August 1st at 11:43 a.m., all I really have to do is click down there under Tuesday, August 1st, 11:43, and restore that revision, restore that version. Restoring that old version doesn't mess up the current one. So if you just kind of think about revision history as kind of a roadmap, and you can see at any point in time where you were and just jump back and forth. So you can go back and forth between versions as much as you want without losing the edits. So for example, one way to use this is if you're using a Google Slides presentation, you're using it for multiple periods. So first period, and you have the kids make comments, or you have the kids edit on your Google Slides presentation in first period. Instead of making a copy of that for second period, you can actually just revert back to when you have the nice clean copy and then have second period do it. And then you could revert back to a clean copy again and go through the day. And then you can use that revision history to jump back and forth between versions. The next one is adding images of analog work. So one of the hardest things to do is for a Chromebook or for a digital classroom is those kinds of things that still need handwriting. And I'm thinking specifically as math. My wife's a math teacher, and so a lot of times, she looks at the Chromebook, says, "How can I have kids show their work?" Well, one of the ways to do it is to have a assignment where the students can um, put their digital work in. So, for example, if I want to make one presentation and I have the students each do a title slide and then create a blank slide, they can take a snapshot. They can insert an image and then select take a snapshot. They can take the work they've done on a piece of paper, hold it up to their Chromebook camera and take the photo, and then you actually have the digital work right inside that slides presentation for you to review. Now, some teachers of old school might say to me, well, why would I want to do that? Why don't I just have them turn in the paper? And you can do that, but the question is, the next time you're reviewing work, paperwork home, now you've got it in one nice digital file. You can go through and correct students' work, and it's there with you all the time. So consider doing this to add images of analog work to your digital life. Continuing on, the Explore tool. The Explore tool is this little button. It looks like a star. It says Explore, and it's at the bottom of docs, sheets, and slides. And depending on which product you're in, the Explore tool does different things. In the docs product, for example, you can actually research on the web without leaving the doc you're in. So you could click on that Explore tool and you could do Google searches. You can cite articles. So if you pull up an article that you want to cite, you can actually cite it using MLA or APA or Chicago style. You can do that right in docs using that Explore tool. And when you cite the article, it'll get a little footnote that goes at the bottom of your page. In Sheets, this is a great one because you can actually make formulas. Instead of making formulas, you can ask questions with words to get answers about your data. So for example, I was doing a document, a sheet that had t-shirt sizes. And so I wanted Google Sheets to count the number of t-shirts of each size. So how many youth larges and how many adult smalls. I could go through and actually write a formula to have that happen, or I could go to the Explore tool and say, give me a table of all the different sizes of shirts. And then it would just make it for me and not have to put any formulas in there. And also allows you to make your data pop with some formatting suggestions. So maybe you have a good set of data there, but it's not the right way that it should look. And so it'll make some formatting suggestions. In Slides, the Explore tool turns into making your slides presentation look better. You can insert photos and clip art right in there. And actually, it'll make suggestions on improving slide formatting. So once you get your slides all put together, if you hit that Explore tool, it'll go through and maybe you're just not happy with how something looks And if you click that Explore tool, the slide will actually show you a nice way to make that slide look better. So maybe it's to make a photo that is circular, and so it'll put a circular border around your photo. But the Explore tool really helps things look nice. One of the other things that we think about is collaboration. And if you've ever tried to put a number of kids into a Google Doc and have them work on a collaborative document, you'll know that that gets a little unwieldy, a little crazy when you get more than 2 or 3 people in there. So how can we have students collaborate and not have it be a crazy madhouse? One way is to use a slides or a sheets file, and not one of those for each student, but one of those for all students. So in slides, what you can do is have each student have their own slide. They just have to put their name on the slide or in the comments section. And then they can use that slide as a blank canvas to put whatever on there. They could answer questions, they could put photos, a collage, however you want to do it. And then in sheets, you can have each student with their own tab. Be just down on the bottom of the line, you can have Susie and Johnny, and they can each have a tab that you can do. And as the teacher, you now have one file to deal with instead of all the files. However, each slide or tab has that unique URL that you can be shared with you or turned into Classroom. So if you take a look down at the URL at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see after the word edit, and it's highlighted in green, it says slide equals ID and then a bunch of letters and numbers. What that is that's a unique slide ID for each student. So if I go to that URL, it will open that slides presentation and go directly to that slide URL for each student. So Johnny could submit his slide URL, and I can just click on it. It'll open the file to his URL really quickly. Now, I will say one thing with this. You have to be okay with the students seeing each other's work, because there really is no way once you share this file with the students that their work becomes private. It has to be something that you're okay with them collaborating on and being able to see each other's work. If you are, it's a great way to collaborate and not let things get super crazy. And then this is a really simple one, the Google Docs update that adds capitalization. So you can use the format menu to really quickly convert text to lowercase, uppercase, or title case. So I used to be an English teacher, and so I get really annoyed when I get text that isn't formatted correctly. It's all lowercase or all uppercase or something like that. So you can actually use that capitalization menu to convert the text how you want to. Previously, you needed an add-on to do this, but now it's built right into the Google Docs. I'll turn it back to Kristie.
All right, great. Thanks, Chris. So this next one that we're going to talk about, and we know our students love their emojis. And so now within Google, you have slides, sheets, and docs. You can go ahead and use that insert menu and insert an emoji. And you can see we have a little video in there that if you go ahead and go to your insert menu and your special characters, under categories, you can select emoji, and you just have a ton of different ones that you can go ahead and choose from. So this might add a little bit more excitement to some of the things that they might be doing within their documents or presentations. This is probably another one of my favorites here, which is force make a copy, because especially in our job, when Chris and I do presentations, there's a lot of people that want copies of our presentations. And so what essentially happens is that if we give them a link and we give them view only rights, then they can go ahead and go to File, Make a Copy. Well, when Chris was talking about a little bit earlier how to change the URL, you can do the same thing and force it to make a copy. So for instance, if you look down at the bottom of the slide, the first URL is what generally you would be seeing. Now this one says edit, but of course it could be something different too. But if you get rid of, and I mean just like delete, the word edit, the question mark, USP equals sharing, all that stuff, and you replace it with the word copy, and you give that new URL to a group of people or students or teachers or whoever, what will happen is when they click on that URL or when they get it, it will pop up with, would you like to make a copy of, and then whatever the title of the document is. And what I think is really cool is they're not even allowed to see the document or the slideshow or the Google Sheet or anything until they actually click on make a copy. And so this essentially just forces them to make a copy. So just delete that edit and everything after it, replace it with copy, and then go ahead and give them that new URL, and then they'll have their own copy of that presentation. Using shortcuts in forms, and I know forms is, everybody loves using forms, but sometimes we're just trying to find quicker ways to do things in forms. And so here's some shortcuts that you can go ahead and utilize. Control, Shift, and Enter inserts another question. This is going to save you time from going to the side menu and clicking that plus sign. Or you can move the question up, or you can move the question down. So those people that are out there that love their keyboard shortcuts, hopefully this helps you when you're using Google Forms, that you don't always have to use your mouse click to do it. Reusing your Google Forms, this is becoming, I mean, this is awesome in my opinion, because again, we all use Google Forms, but essentially what happens is when you have a Google form and you want to reuse it for your second period and your third period and your fourth period, or maybe you want to reuse it, semester after semester, everybody always thinks that they have to make a copy of the form to make a new spreadsheet. Well, that's not the case. What you can do is you can just unlink your form. So by clicking on those three dots off to the side, and you're seeing that little video pop up, those three dots off to the side, you can click on unlink. And what that does is that actually unlinks or breaks the link to the form to the spreadsheet. So the form then lives independently and the spreadsheet lives independently. And so then when you go back to your form and you can go ahead and create a new spreadsheet, it will create a brand new one. The only thing that you want to make sure that you do is, because when you send out your form and the students or teachers, whoever your audience is filling out your Google form, the responses go to both the form and the spreadsheet. So if you're going to go ahead and create a new spreadsheet and unlink your form, you want to make sure that you delete the responses within the form so that it looks like, or it simulates it being a brand new form, when really it's not. It's just that you unlinked it. Of course, you can keep the spreadsheet, just create a new one, and then you'll have a new spreadsheet for each time that you use the form, or each semester, whatever that you're using it for.
And deleting your data in the form itself does not delete the data in the spreadsheet. So that's just important to note.
Yep, thanks, Chris. So along the same lines as Google Forms, we have pre-filled URLs. Now I'll tell you, I use this one quite a bit. When Chris and I do presentations, we ask people to fill out an evaluation. Well, if we know that you're coming to a Google Classroom class and we know that we're the teachers, we're not going to make you fill that out in the form, because we already know that. So we can actually fill that out in the form for you. And then we give you, what happens is it gives you a new link, a new URL. So when we give you that new URL, then those answers are already filled in that form. So this is also a really popular one if you're filling out like a registration thing where everybody lives in Ohio, or everybody lives in Slovenia or something like that. You don't have to require them to actually type that in or fill in that question. You can actually fill that out, get the pre-filled URL link, and then it will give you a brand new link, and then you can give that new link out to your audience. All right, so I'll let Chris go on to tip number 26.
All right, well, we're more than halfway through it, and I hope you're enjoying the tips that we're giving you. And again, that presentation link at the top, you can get the copy of this and then try these out on your own. No, we're going really, really fast, but want to get you a lot of information in a short time. So we know in Google Classroom, when we create a file and we attach a Google Drive file, students can view the file, and that basically means that the students can only see the file, they can't change it. Students can edit the file, and this is where all of the students are editing one single file. And then the third option is to make a copy for each student, and that would again make a copy in everybody's Google Drive of the file individually with their name on it. But really, we should think about students can edit the file more like students can collaborate, because when you use that middle option, it is one collaboration where students are all editing the same file. Now, there are certain things that you can do to get around the situation where students are making changes. Again, you can use a Google Slides presentation or a Google Sheet, or you can give specific spots within a Google Doc where the students can fill out and make changes, much like the live discussion document for TILO. But think of that students can edit file as really students can collaborate. The next one is really, really cool, and that's the display the classroom join code full screen. So previously, until Google implemented this, we actually had to cut and paste the class code into a Google Doc, blow it up nice and big, and then students could see it to join the classroom. Now you can just click on the class code and say display, and it'll open this nice little window code, and you can even use that little square box at the bottom to blow it up full screen. And so now an easy way to get your students to join Google Classroom, play that class code and make it full screen, and they can quickly get into your Google Classroom class. This one's really useful when you're grading as a teacher. You can click on a particular student work. So if I go into a Google Classroom class and I choose my student, I can see all the work that they have done to heretofore and what it's done and what's not done. And then I can filter stuff that's turned in or stuff that I've already returned or stuff that's missing. And I can just get a really quick look at what all the student has done, all the work they've done in one place without having to track each individual assignment down. This one is important when dealing with classrooms, and we have started using this one when Kristie and I are teaching our Google online cohort, and that is numbering the assignment in classroom. So here the example shows a 3-digit number starting with a hashtag or a pound sign, for those of you that are my age. The reason we want to do that is we want to organize, and the best way to organize assignments or to sort is to have a 3-digit code. The reason we want to use the hashtag or the pound sign is so that when we're searching, so if I want to look for assignment 004, I just go in the find, and if I put that hashtag 004, it'll give me all the assignments and all of the files that are labeled that way. Now, as you can see, I've got a reading reflection assignment here on the screen in the screenshot. I have also taken all of the attachments. So the reading selection, the reflection options, I have titled the same, starting with the same 004. So now, when the assignment is created, the files are added to Drive and sorted by that hashtag. So they're all sorted together nicely. So if I go into Google Classroom and I go to my Google Drive folder, I can find all the attachments that go with a particular assignment, all those assignments right there together. So it's a good way. Another bonus tip there to communicate with a student what they're missing. So maybe you don't say you're missing the Chapter 7 review question. You say you're missing assignment number 29. The new part of Classroom, it's probably out about a year now, is the ability to differentiate assignments. So when you create an assignment or an announcement, you can use the pull-down menu. By default says all students. You can uncheck all students and you can only assign particular work to different students. So if I want to assign this assignment to Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, I uncheck all students. I click Barney's picture and Fred's checkbox there, and then I can assign work to them only. This is great for high flyers. So you've got those kids that are just head and shoulders above everybody else. You can give them some harder work, or you can give some of those that need a little additional practice or intervention. You can give them some work too. The nice part about it is you can do it for one student, all students, or multiple students, and the students don't know that you've assigned the work to somebody else. So for example, if I assign one particular assignment just to Fred, Barney won't know that he has that Fred has that assignment. It just shows up on Fred's Google Classroom. So it's a quick way to assign work to the students in a timely manner and differentiate among those that are high flyers and those who need more help. Kristie?
Okay, so we're going to move on to tip number 31. And this is to add links to comments. Now, you may not have really ever thought about this, but if you're leaving comments, and so for instance, this has a picture of a comment. Here's a link to, maybe a certain book or a certain website. You can go ahead and do that. But the important thing is that you actually need to put the whole entire website on there. So the HTTP or the www, everything needs to be there in order for it to work, because otherwise it's not going to show up as like a real live link. But maybe you didn't know that you can do that. So hopefully that is a good tip for you, that you can go ahead and leave website links inside of comments. This is, I feel like a lot of these are my favorites, but this is another one of my favorites in Google Classroom, and this is to reuse your posts. And lots of times we'll get questions from people that say like, oh, I have a class that I taught last semester or last quarter, and I really wish I could just bring it all back over, pretty quickly. Well, the neat thing is even if your classes are archived, and so, we'll sometimes get that question too. If you've taught a class last quarter or last semester, you can feel free to archive it. Don't delete it completely, but just archive it so that it's not on your home page in Classroom anymore. But for your new class, when you do, your new semester or your new quarter, you can go ahead and reuse your post from your previous class. And so what's really nice about that is that if you've typed up a really long assignment or a really long explanation about what they need to do, you do not need to redo that. You can just bring it over and reuse it. And so reusing posts is under that little plus sign within Classroom, the same spot where you go to create your questions and your assignments and your announcements. At the very top, it's called reuse posts. So at that point, you would just search for the class that you've taught before or that you want to find that post, and then you can go ahead and reuse that post. Now, it is really important to note, though, and if you look down at the bottom of that slide, there is a box that says create new copies of all attachments. And while that might seem like a good idea, you don't really want to do that, because what will happen is then it will create new copies of all the attachments that were already created when you first use that post. Now, however, if you do want to create new copies, you certainly can do that, but you don't really need to. So that is just a box I wanted to point out at the bottom of that screen. Okay, so Share to Classroom extension. If you are using Google Classroom, I would highly recommend that you use this extension. And if you're not really familiar with what extensions are, when you sign into your Chrome profile, and if you remember at the very beginning of this webinar, I pointed out Chris's name up in the top corner. That meant that he was signed into Chrome. And so with that said, you can go ahead and add apps and extensions to your account, and they, follow you in the cloud. So no matter what Chromebook or what computer you're on, they're going to be they'll follow with you. And so this extension called Share to Classroom, if you put this on your computer, you can very easily send things to your classroom. So for instance, if I wanted to, maybe I was on a CNN webpage and I wanted to go ahead and say, wow, this is an awesome article. I wanted my students to read this in my social studies Google Classroom class. If I had the Share to Classroom extension, I could just click on that extension. It will search through my Google Classroom classes because I'm already logged in, and it will allow me to either create an announcement with that link or that CNN article already attached. I can ask a question, or I can go ahead and ask or do an assignment. And that's really neat because basically it's saving me time than copying the link and then going back and pasting it in my social studies class. Now, if you want to push, and so that third option there says push a website. If you want to push a website, so for instance, maybe that CNN article really didn't have an announcement or a question. I really just wanted my kids to see it like right now. If I want to push that website out to them, I can certainly do that. But your kids also need to have that Share to Classroom extension. So as long as you have it and your students have it, you can push that website out to them, and then that will pop up on their screen, and then they can see it right away, where you don't really have to make an announcement. So that's a really good extension to go ahead and use. There's also another extension that we recommend. It's by Alice Keeler. Hopefully you guys have heard of Alice Keeler. She's awesome. She has so many tips and tricks that she talks about. And one of her extensions is called the Drive 20 Chrome extension. So, and with this cohort that Chris and I are teaching, we get a lot of questions about, what's the quickest way to grade, and how, I have 30 kids and I hate closing and opening each assignment, all the time. And so there's an extension called Drive 20, and what that does is if you go to that folder icon, and if you look on that little screenshot off to the side of the page, if you go to that folder icon and then sort by last opened by me, you can click on her Drive 20 Chrome extension, and it will basically open 20 tabs at a time. So then you can go ahead and look at the first one. You could look at maybe the 20th one, and then 19, 18, go all the way back. And then again, we're going to go back to that keyboard shortcut. Control-W will quickly close those tabs for you when you're done grading. So this is really going to save you some time rather than closing and opening each assignment of your students separately. So just by using that Drive 20 extension. Okay, so another extension is the goo.gl shortener, the URL shortener. And I love this one. This is another one of my favorites, where if I want to, like, again, Chris and I do a lot of these presentations, and we're going to offer the option for people to make copies, but we're certainly not going to tell you to type in a super long URL. What we can do is we can shorten it. If we have this Google URL shortener up in our Chrome profile already added, I can literally just click one time on it and it shortens the URL for me, just like Bitly or maybe Tiny URL. You may have heard of those. It kind of does the same thing. But in addition to shortening the URL, it also creates a QR code for me, which is really slick, because now if my students have any kind of device, a phone, or even parents, like if parents are coming in for parent-teacher conferences, or something where you want them to get a presentation or a document or something like that, they can scan that QR code with their phone, and then they automatically can see that presentation or that document and maybe even make a copy if they want to. So that's really helpful. And then the last thing that it does is it adds a link to their history or to your history, and then you can kind of keep track. So really, really cool extension that is useful. So I'll hand it back to Chris for tip number 36.
All right, this one is another extension. It's called Alice Keeler Open Side by Side. And basically, the extension allows you to right-click on any link in your Chrome and have the destination open on the right side of the screen. I can actually have my Google Classroom window there, for example, and I right-click on an assignment and say Open Side by Side, and now it splits the screen, and I have the document and the classroom side by side. So it's just a quick way to open links side by side within your browser. The next one is Equatio. And Equatio used to be called GMath, and now it's called Equatio, and basically allows you to create mathematical equations, formulas, and quizzes right from your Google Doc. You can type in your forms, or you can handwrite your formulas, and you don't really need to know the math code. You can actually just type in like square root of 144, and it will actually translate down and put that equation in for you. There is a free version that's compatible with Google Docs only, but the paid version adds forms, sheets, and slides to the mix. So you can actually have equations and all of that. And there's a link to it, but the nice part about this is if you as the teacher have it installed, you can use it to create your tests and quizzes. But if the students have it installed, they can use it to actually do their work as well. So they can use Equatio to actually solve the equations right on the paper, or right on the digital paper rather, in Google Docs. So it's a quick way to use your math class stuff and get your equations built into Google. This one is also great for sharing, and that's students being able to Chromecast their screens. So now when you have your computer hooked up to either your Clever Touch or your smart board, you can invite your students to cast their screens wirelessly to your computer. So you can either invite them through Google Classroom or by individually selecting students by their email address, and you can actually have them cast up to your device, which then will go on the big screen. And teachers can also cast to their device by another Chrome device. So if you have something on a tablet, you can cast to your device with the Chromecast. It's a little bit challenging to explain how to do it in a short webinar such as this, but there is a YouTube video link there where you can try it out and take a look at how it happens in action. It's a quick way of sharing right up to your screen. I love Google Keep. I am a Google Keep freak. Google Keep is the best kept secret of Google, and it's basically all these things. It's a collaborative to-do list. It lets me organize my list with labels and colors. If I have the mobile app, which I do, I record an audio note. It will actually take the audio of my voice. It'll save the audio, but it'll also try to take what I'm saying and type it out into a note. I can use it for checklists and notes. I can use it for the grocery list. I can add pictures and annotate them. So this is a great one. If you're at a conference, you can take a bunch of pictures of the slides that people are presenting and add it right into Google Keep. I use it a lot of times to save websites. There is an extension called the Google Keep extension. And what happens with that is if you're up on a page that you want to save, you just click that Google Keep extension, and it'll actually put the URL and a preview of the website right into your Google Keep. It also has time and location-based reminders. So I can remind myself every day at 2 o'clock to do something, or I can remind myself when I get to work that I have to do something. So I can use either time or location to set up a reminder. And then you can also do a date and time reminder. So you can say, Next Tuesday at 7, I want to remember to take the trash out. So Google Keep is something to explore if you've never tried it out. And you can get to it by going to keep.google.com. And then this is also very neat, and it's basically the next gen of email. It's called Inbox by Google. You get to this by going to inbox.google.com. A separate Google account. It works with the Google account you have. And the nice part about it is if you try it out and you don't like it, you can go back to Gmail and your stuff will all be there. But what I like about it is it has smart bundling. So what I can do is if I'm booking a trip, for example, and I have my hotel, my rental car, and my flight, it's smart enough to bundle all that into something called a vacation or a trip, and it bundles it right in your inbox. It also has artificial intelligence. So what this allows you to do is, for example, if I have a package coming, it'll actually have a link right there where I could track the package right at the bottom of the email. It also has reminders built into it, so you can actually use it as a to-do list. If you look at the screenshot down there, basically you have 3 spots for your mail: inbox, snooze, and done. So I can actually snooze an email in inbox, and for example, I get an email every Monday that I need to act on every Friday. So all I do is when it hits my inbox, I snooze it until Friday, and then Friday morning, it'll show up there in my inbox again. You think of all your emails as to-do items. So the done is like your all mail in the Gmail client. So when you go to done, anything that you've checked off shows up there. And then there's all these little bundles it'll put. It'll put all your purchases together, all your trips, and it'll just bundle things and make everything super nice. It makes it really quick to go through your Gmail. And it's kind of be the next version of Gmail. I expect a lot of these features are going to start getting rolled into the Gmail client. But if you want to try the future out now, inbox.google.com.
All right. So number 41 is Drive Slides, and this is another extension that you can feel free to download. This is great if you have a lot of pictures, and I used to be a former elementary teacher, and so I just remember making slideshows of just, one picture on each slide and maybe talk a little bit about it. And it just took forever because you had to have a picture and then you put it on a slide and then you resized it and everything. It just took a long time. What Drive Slides does is if you have a folder in your Google Drive account and it's filled with, let's say, 40 pictures, and you click on that Drive Slides extension, what'll happen automatically is that Drive Slides will create a presentation for you, and it will put each one of your 40 pictures on an individual slide within a Google slideshow. And so that saves so much time. You can always go back and resize them if you want to. But for the most part, they come in really nice and they come in at a good size and your presentation is done. So check that out, Drive Slides extension. Flippity.net is something too that you want to check out. Again, when I was an elementary teacher, I was always looking for ways to do like review games and Jeopardy or different things for my class for reviewing for a test. And so Flippity.net really offers a lot of those features, and you can see the screenshot down below. You can do flashcards, you can do the random name picker, you can do the crossword puzzle. It does have like a Jeopardy type game that you can, it's called the quiz show. It is like a Jeopardy type game where you can have teams. I also like that there's like sounds to it. I mean, not like really crazy sounds, but like if you get the answer right or you get the answer wrong in the quiz show, it does, sound off that you got it right or wrong. So that's kind of nice. And then all of these just pull from Google Sheets. So this is actually, in addition to Flippity.net, it is an add-on in Sheets. And so if you are familiar with add-ons, you can go ahead and add it on and then just make it even easier to kind of move your stuff over to Flippity. Google Lit Trips. If you've never tried Google Lit Trips, you can take a look at googlelittrips.org. It's a free, it's free to set up an account. You do have to be a member. They don't really send you anything. I mean, they send you the Lit Trips. They don't send you spam or anything like that, but you do have to be a member. Once you're a member, you can request a lit trip. And what a lit trip basically is, and there's a picture of Anne Frank over there. If you download her lit trip, inside, and Google Earth is all now brand new, so it's pretty awesome of the things that it does. Inside of Google Earth, it will take you through all the different locations of Anne Frank, so all the important events in her life. And so within Google Earth, it's really helpful for the students to see kind of, what that looks like, because, it's one thing to read about it, but it's a whole nother thing to actually experience it in, on like Google Earth. And so that's just kind of nice. There's actually a ton of different lit trips that are there that you can feel free to check out. And once they're imported into Google Earth, as long as you're signed into your Google Earth account or your Google account, it will save it for you. So no matter what computer you're on, it will travel with you in the cloud. So just go ahead and check out Google Lit Trips. In addition to Google Lit Trips, there's also a tour builder. So let's just say that you went on a cool vacation, you went to Paris or Europe or somewhere really far away, that maybe you had a unit that you were actually teaching the kids about that. So maybe you took pictures of some of those places, and now you want to make your own tour and show your students about what you experienced. So just like we looked at Anne Frank's lit trip or tour, you can do the same thing within Google Earth. So if you go to Tour Builder with Google.com, you can create all the different locations or all your different stops that you may want your students to experience. Now, what's really neat about it is each stop. So let's say you went to Disney World. If you went to downtown Disney was your first stop, you can actually include up to 25 pictures and or videos in just that one location. And so your students would be able to see all those. Now they don't have to watch all of them or see all of them, but you can include those. And so with Google, you're really not limited too much on space, so you can go ahead and put different stops on your tour. Once it's saved inside Google Earth, then you can go ahead and visit it at any time. Google Fonts, and elementary teachers, you're going to love this one. So fonts.google.com, so you can go ahead and try them out in your web browser and then download them. If you're struggling to find something that you really like, and there's a note at the bottom, there's currently 848 of them. So you can go ahead and find some cool fonts that you may not already use within Google. So go ahead and check that out. All right, so that brings us to our 45 tips, and I'm looking at the time and we pretty much did it perfectly because on my watch it's 4:27. So we just want to thank you for joining us today. Again, if you were unable to get that presentation link, it is at the top of the page. You can go ahead and watch all of these because I know Chris and I went fairly quickly through these 45 tips. I also want to mention the TILO website if you're not familiar with that TILO website, and I will bring it up here in just a second. It is listed there as well as the calendar. This is a Google Calendar, so you can feel free to add it to your list of calendars, and any of these webinars are located in the calendar, as well as other events that may be happening, within the state. So it's a good way just to kind of stay involved in what's going on. The evaluation, it is on the YouTube page for this session. If you've joined us for this session, you should hopefully see a link there. And if not, it will be sent via email, so keep an eye out for that. So I am going to go ahead and just visit the TILO.org website just so you can see it really quickly if you're unfamiliar with it. It'll pop up here in just a second. So we have the home, join us, calendar is where you can go ahead and view that calendar and see all the different events. Of course, here's the webinars and any updates that may be occurring. So I'm going to head back over to our last page again, which is the TILO website and our information. So thank you again for joining us, and hopefully you've learned some things about the G Suite today.
Thanks, everyone.